right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery this afternoon, and we do have one of my favorite representatives sitting right across the table from me this afternoon, Representative Mike Pitts. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great.
It's time to go. Well, it's hard to say it's time to go back to work when you work all year long anyways, isn't it?
Well, it's a part-time job, and
Yes.
everybody knows that.
It's a part-time job. I guess that's why every time I call you, you're working on something, right?
Yeah.
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 Except when you do get away, really get away.
I have to leave the state and get out of cell phone service if I want to get away.
Yeah.
You know, and all jokes aside, it has become a 24/7 duty. People with cell phones and computers now expect immediate response and instant accessibility.
That's right. So, yeah, I guess that's why you have to go to Canada and places to get away. And I understand that. I understand. But are you? What do you think as you're getting ready to go back into this new session that starts tomorrow? What's your feeling about things? In general, a one sentence, what's your feeling about how things are going to go this year?
I think it's going to be chaotic.
Chaotic.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's going to be chaotic in the sense that there's going to be a strong push for a lot of different things to get done early and quickly. And government just doesn't move that way, so it's going to be difficult. And I think that in itself will create some degree of chaos. You have some major issues that need to be addressed, and you'll have factions trying to address all of them at one time.
Yeah, that can be actually too much. And of course, last year at the fact that we were getting ready for a re-election campaign, a lot of stuff got shelved.
It did. And this particular session, if it doesn't happen this year, it likely won't happen next year if there's any amount of controversy to it, because the Senate has to run next year.
Great. That's particularly wonderful, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. What do you think as far as the big issues for this year are? What do you think?
Well, from my perspective, it's the same as it always is. It deals with budget. I'm a budget chairman. That's always a big issue and a primary issue for me going into every year. This particular year, we have some external factors that are going to throw even further monkey wrenches into the budget system. One being the Abbeville lawsuit that was 22 years old that the Supreme Court finally ruled on.
And what was the outcome of that?
The outcome was that the suit itself called for equal access to education and equal funding to education. And what that means is the state itself provides a section of funding, local government provides a section of funding, federal government provides a section of funding. Where the real problem comes in is in a county like Abbeville as compared to a county like Spartanburg. It's the epitome of haves versus have-nots. You have such a huge industrial base in Spartanburg now that they have local monies to go after the best and brightest teachers and to build the University of Dorman up there. And
It's a high school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a little different for Abbeville or Saluda or a lot of other counties, and even Greenwood and Lawrence for that matter.
So what's the answer then? What's the answer?
Well, the Supreme Court's answer said we do need to provide equal access and equal opportunity to education, and the immediate scream's going to be any excess monies that we can find in any pocketbook or taxpayer's wallet should come to education, and that's not necessarily the answer.
Well, then what do you think is the answer?
Well, we live in a day of technology that is far more advanced than at any other time in history, and it changes on a daily basis and becomes even even more accurate and user-friendly. I have an 8-year-old that's a 3rd grader that programs all of the electronics in my office and my home. I have a 4-year-old grandson that can program an iPad. I just learned how to turn one on and get online with an iPad. My suggestion or my idea would be to utilize technology, virtual schools. And I know you have an immediate uproar for protection of territory, but other countries have proven this works. And I wouldn't recommend it in some levels of school, but definitely in high school you can do that. And how would it work? We are already in the process through the governor's leadership from 2 years ago of putting laptops at every desk.
Correct.
When you have a laptop at every desk and you have the ability that we do now have to put people online, we should look at hiring the best teacher we can find for a given subject, whether that's math, whether that's science, whether it's any of the others that we fall behind on, but particularly those two. We hire the best that we can find in the nation and pay that individual, he or she, whatever it takes to put them in that position.
In South Carolina.
In South Carolina. And then every student, whether it's in Lawrence, Greenwood, Abbeville, Spartanburg, the Corridor of Shame, or Beaufort and Myrtle Beach, receive the same instruction, the same teacher. They are absolutely on equal footing at that point. If you have failures at that point, it's not going to be the teacher. I'm not saying that we don't have good teachers. We do have some good teachers.
It's kind of hard to have it equal across the board, though, isn't it? All across the state.
It is. It's absolutely hard. And the reason is, like I said, Dorman can go after the best teachers they can find to draw them in.
And they can afford to pay them.
Because they can afford to pay them. And money speaks. Money talks. It's that simple. But if we could do that, if we could, you could put a monitor, and I'm not talking about a TV monitor, I'm talking about an individual person to monitor a classroom at a much less cost to the taxpayer, and spread that cost around the state much more evenly. I think it's time for us to look outside the box and not just keep feeding the system.
I think you've got a good point there. Have you got support from other representatives?
Yes, I do. I've been talking with this. My suite mate is Phil Lowe from, or one of my suite mates is Phil Lowe, a representative from Florence. And he and I have talked about this for a couple of years now. But I think with this lawsuit coming to fruition, it's the time is right.
That's right. And with a monitor or a teacher level type person that could work with the students physically in the class, that would give them the opportunity to bounce questions back and forth, not only online, but also right there in the classroom.
That's correct. And it also, it's like I said, other countries have proven that virtual works. And today's kids are...
Well, that's how you've got to engage them. You can't engage them the old way, the way we learned, Mike.
No, they get bored and turn away.
Right,
exactly. They want information the same way my constituents want access to me right now.
Right now. It's all instant, isn't it?
It is, and they are good at it. And when I say they, I'm talking about today's students. They are very good at it.
Well, and they're moving at so much faster pace. That's the other thing. They move ahead so fast.
Well, a friend of mine told me the other day that he said, I believe my grandkids are so much smarter than I was at that same age. And I help my granddaughter with homework quite often. And she is studying stuff at this point in 3rd grade that was thrown at me in 5th or 6th grade. And at times stuff that I didn't see till junior high. So They are. I don't know that they are smarter, and this is what I told him. I don't know that the kids are smarter, but they certainly have much more information at their disposal than I did.
I think the sponge, probably we never realized our abilities to absorb information though either.
Well, we did, and we did absorb information, but we absorbed quite a different kind of information. I absorbed a lot of information from grandparents, from having time to spend with grandparents and extended family that today's kids don't have.
That's true. That is very true.
Because of the fast pace of their society. My siblings, my extended family of cousins, and myself, neighbors, we had time to sit down and talk without interference from an iPad, an iPod, an iPhone, and all the other eyes out there. But it was we had a different kind of information that kids today don't have. I think if you had asked most of the high school students when I was in high school who the president is or who the governor of the state is, they could have answered that question. It's a proven fact that today's kids can't answer that question. Heck, most of the population can't answer that question at times.
Well, that's civics, and that's stuff that doesn't concern us, Mike. But who's the biggest star out there in Hollywood now? That's important.
Well, I've seen that. But you know what, Aunt?
What?
I can't answer that question.
Well, there you go. You're lopsided too then, Mike Pitts. Hey, I'm Ann Eller here with Representative Mike Pitts. We're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. We'll be back. We got a lot to talk about this afternoon. If you've got a question or a comment for Mike, give us a call. 229-7984. That's 229-7984. That's right back here, Sharp Passage Gallery, talking to Mike Pitts. We've just been talking a little bit about education. There's so many issues out there. We're going to have to move on and try to talk about another one. One of the other big ones out there, of course, is the gas, what we're going to, not gas tax, but, well, that's a part of it, but the roads and the bridges, what we're going to do about that. Governor Haley said she would not announce her ideas until after the election, and inauguration is on Wednesday, so I guess we should be hearing from her what she plans. And of course there's just been a group that have been working together trying to come up with a plan. Price of gas is way down. Mike Pitts, is a gas tax something we could be looking at?
Gas tax is being discussed as part of the equation. I don't know whether that is a reality or not, but I know the Senate has discussed it. Some members of the House have discussed it. Tommy Stringer, a member of the House from Greenville, actually put a bill in to increase gas tax and then index it and sunset it, or review it, not necessarily sunset it, but it indexes it, which is what should have been done years ago as an index, so it kept up with inflation, but that's not happened. The ad hoc committee chaired by Gary Summerall from Rock Hill. Gary is one of the most conservative individuals in state government. Absolutely one of the most conservative in the state house. He chairs that committee. Not talked to Gary to find out exactly what they're going to do, because I trust Gary to bring us back something workable, and if I don't like it, I will tell him so. But the ad hoc committee has its final meeting tomorrow before we go into session. So I assume we will hear something in the first couple of weeks, or see something in the form of a bill produced by that ad hoc committee. Shannon Riley here in Greenwood actually serves on that committee.
Well, we got to do something about it. I mean, I saw the comments from Michelin, from the CEO of Michelin, kind of making some comments about the condition of our roads and whatnot here in the state of South Carolina.
Well, I agree with him. The roads need to be fixed, but when I hear it coming from the president of Michelin, it kind of makes me wonder, would he like for us to take all his tax incentives away?
So would you have more dollars then for the roads?
Oh, yeah, we would have more dollars for roads and bridges. So I was just a little bit surprised at that one, because there have been huge incentives, both on the state and local level, given to Michigan.
So,
And when you give tax incentives, you are taking part of your revenue stream away. And last time, I think the last time I was on, we talked about the revenue stream not being adequate to fix our roads and bridges, to infuse the amount of money that is needed to bring them up to speed in any manner of a timely fashion. So I think it's going to have to be a combination of things. Whether the gas tax is part of the equation or not, I don't know. I do know that in Greenville, as I said, Tommy Stringer, who is also a very fiscal conservative legislator that put the gas tax bill in, Greenville voted down a gas tax on referendum. So I really don't know yet. I know that I have polled individuals in any time I've been given an opportunity to speak in the last year, and people have told me with a strong voice that they would be willing to pay more if it went directly to fixing roads and bridges.
well, that's always the problem, isn't it, Mike?
That's right. You know, if I were to look at a gas tax, I would be willing to look and pay a little more myself, but I would not be willing to put it in the front door, take it out the back door, nor would I be willing to put a tax on without a sunset on it, so that we could look at it again in 5 years and see if it was doing what we intended to do with it. Now, people say once you put a tax on, it can't come off, but it can come off if you truly, absolutely sunset it.
Well, we had that situation here in Greenwood County when it came down to paying for the dam and paying for the library. They added a penny sales tax, and when those dollars were raised, the money came, the 1% came off.
Well, and again, it has to be an absolute sunset in order to do that. If I were to be the one that were able to use the magic pen and draft what I wanted to do, I would be willing to look at what Stringer is doing with a small increase in the indexing. But I would also want that sunset to be put in the form of a referendum back to the people. That way they speak very clearly, are we as state government doing what you want us to do with this money for roads and bridges?
You know, one of the things about it would be that the money should come back to the counties where the money is collected from. Well, there you go. That's a problem.
That becomes a problem because the counties that send it in quite often are not the counties with the most roads and the biggest delegations.
Well, see, there you go. I knew we'd reached the problem here. And that's where the problem quite often in the upstate versus the lower state, where there is more dollars and more constituents and more people.
Well, Charles, in reality, Myrtle Beach is the golden goose for the state.
Right.
Myrtle Beach brings in a huge amount of our state revenue. And we are a tourist-driven economy. And Charleston would be close to second, then Beaufort right on down the coast. So the coast brings in a ton of our money. Greenville spends a lot of it. And Greenville spends a lot of it. Greenville-Spartanburg get a good bit of it because of the industrial base being in those areas. And I don't disagree with that. We have to have good roads
Throughout the whole state.
But throughout the whole state. And my constituents in Laurens and Greenwood pay the same taxes that everyone else does. But when you talk about the gas tax, it is one that is shared by those tourists that come into our state.
Exactly.
That don't live here but do use our roads. The estimates are between 30 and 40% of that revenue stream would come from out-of-state people paying that tax.
So there you go. Hey, I tell you what, we are right here with Mike Pitts. We're going to join South Carolina News in Progress. We'll be back. It's going to get more interesting, so don't you go away.
Are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? or a college tuition hung on a wall, or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facets Gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facets Gallery, 72 Bypass, and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
That's right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery. I'm Ann Eller. Sitting across from me today is Representative Mike Pitts. We're having a great conversation. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're getting some feel for what this next session of the legislature is going to be down there in Columbia. And you've already been down working at your desk. I talked to you the other day and you were down at your desk.
I go down about once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week, even when we're not in session.
Okay.
I serve on a huge number of oversight committees. I serve on, or did serve on several ad hoc committees that still are working, although we're not meeting as regular, but we are still working. And I start budget hearings in December. I actually chair the Law Enforcement Public Safety Budget Committee, has 13 agencies under it, and myself and staff start holding budget hearings in December immediately after reorganization, and that's worked well for me. It gives me the ability to, as chairman, to call agencies back in once I see the governor's budget and ask those that are cabinet level agencies, are we on the same page? It gives me the ability to call an agency back in if something comes up during the 3 months that we're actually working on the budget. It also gives me the ability to sit back and take a look at the budget more thoroughly at the end, instead of feeling like I'm up against the clock like most of the other sub-chairs are, trying to get their budget written to the full.
Now, of course, this will be going on really up until probably May, first part of June is when the final budget will be in. Of course, you were telling me that Governor Haley just released her budget today.
She did. Haven't had time to read it. Staff sent me a couple of emails earlier today with the highlights that affect our portion of the budget. So I did look at that, but I've not had a chance to look at the overall budget. I did notice that she put some huge amounts into a couple of areas that I questioned a little bit, but other than that, I haven't really had time to look at her budget.
Now, you keep mentioning this staff that you have. Do you have a large staff down there, Mike? Well, you keep talking about staff. I mean, I just thought I'd put that out there.
Well, staff, I was talking about the cumulative Ways and Means staff. Each budget subcommittee has a budget analyst. I have one budget analyst, and she was in the hospital all last week, so we're a little bit behind. But Katie Owen is my budget analyst, and she does a great job. No, we don't have a huge staff. That's one of the biggest problems that I as a legislator have, especially a House member. The Senate, it has the same budget that the House does, with far fewer members. So they have full-time staff. I have none. Our 2 senators in Greenwood have full-time staff. I have none other than Katie, the budget analyst, and she has a specific core function to do, not constituent concerns, constituent help, and those kind of things.
So you get to handle all those yourself.
That's correct. When I said staff at this point, what I was talking about was the chief analyst for the Ways and Means Committee and the chief of staff for the Ways and Means Committee. Those 2, along with each of the individual analysts, went to the budget presentation, and each of those guys reported back to us what they heard from our section of the budget.
Now, just out of curiosity, we are in this, I guess, this year, the Department of Administration is being expanded and the Budget and Control Board is being changed. Is that correct?
That is very good terminology.
Well, am I right or am I right?
You're right.
Okay.
It's been changed.
Changed. Okay.
The name was changed to protect the innocent, but it's, the name of the committee was changed in the Department of Administration, but the same 5 people still serve with the same amount of power.
Okay, but doesn't Governor Haley, doesn't she have her Department of Administration now that handles some of these functions, or?
That handle some functions, but the core functions that the committee had,
Yes.
they still have.
Interesting. Okay, very interesting. All right, well, gosh, we're going to be on here for a couple of hours here this afternoon, folks. I don't think we can do this show in an hour today. But anyways, say, listen, you dropped a bombshell right after Christmas here, I think, where you proposes decriminalizing small amounts of pot. Is that right?
Well,
Mike Pitts?
it's according to which media I'm talking to
Okay.
as to whether I am legalizing marijuana, decriminalizing marijuana, or exactly what I'm doing.
So what are you doing? We've got you right here on the radio with us, Mike.
The bill is very simple. It says that small amounts of marijuana, and the bill itself, it says under an ounce, possession of that in one single bag or container would not be a criminal offense. It is still a penalty, still a fine, but it would not be a criminal offense. And there are a variety of reasons for that bill. The only people that can legalize marijuana are the same ones that made it illegal to begin with, and that's Congress. It is
Congress, the federal government?
U.S. Congress.
Okay.
It is a federally scheduled drug.
Well, they've got it in Colorado, though.
It's also still federally illegal in Colorado.
Correct.
The problem that they're facing in Colorado is the banks won't take the money from the legal stores that sell it.
Yeah, they all have to deal in cash.
They all have to deal in cash. So
What a return to the wild, wild west.
So it did.
Really?
It has, because it has opened the door to targets of opportunity for armed robbery.
Yes.
But marijuana should not be, in my opinion, marijuana should not be a controlled substance on the schedule list, the same as heroin or cocaine, for instance. And the reason is simple. One is cocaine, heroin, and especially methamphetamine, but methamphetamine is a totally different subject. But cocaine and heroin both come from a plant, but they have to be processed into the form of usage.
Okay.
Marijuana does not. Marijuana is a weed that can grow in the backyard, and does in a lot of backyards.
Yes, it does.
And it is, the process is simply pull it up or pull the leaves or the buds off and let it dry. When I was a police officer, I would have taken the same stand that our chief law enforcement officer, Mark Kill, took. Mark said, I don't want to legalize any drug that's illegal. And like I said, as a law enforcement officer, I would have probably looked at it the same way. But my position now as a legislator, I have a much bigger picture to look at. So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of constituents that may have gotten caught with a joint in college as a freshman and now have a criminal drug record. It is a record that can keep them from getting a medical license, most any professional license,
Sure.
a CDL, and a variety of other things. If an employer 20 years down the road looks at their criminal history and sees one arrest at the age of 19 for drugs He doesn't think about marijuana, or she doesn't think about marijuana. They think, when they see drugs, they think of the cartel and they think of hard drugs. I have had to help a huge number of constituents through the process of lengthy, quite often expensive and time-consuming process of expungement, which is an avenue to use for that particular charge, drug charge. When I was a police officer, I never had to fight a pothead. And
You never had to fight a pothead. Okay.
Nope. Never had to chase someone high on marijuana.
Okay.
A high-speed chase for someone high on marijuana is 30 miles an hour. He's up on the steering wheel with his eyes bugged out. It's just a totally different situation. I did not go to domestic violence calls where someone was smoking pot. Alcohol, on the other hand, which is a legal substance,
Right.
I went to a lot of high-speed collisions. I chased a lot of drunks. I fought a lot of drunks. And I went to a lot of calls where they beat their wife. So what I'm saying is, it does not create a level of problem for public safety, nor for the general public, that or for public safety or for law enforcement, that even alcohol does. There's also a thing called synthetic marijuana. A lot of people will smoke synthetic marijuana. It is a chemical compound, and it is highly dangerous. People can get what the federal government portrayed marijuana to actually be back in the 50s. People can actually get those results from synthetic marijuana. They can receive brain damage, irrevocable brain damage, have heart attacks, et cetera, that just don't have with marijuana. I don't see it as the same problem. Now, with possession, the simple possession, I just do not think that should be a charge that someone can carry for life or have to go through huge expungement process.
Will it save law enforcement a lot of money? Or is that not the
Simple
purpose? The purpose is...
Legalization would.
Mm-hmm.
Legalization absolutely would, of marijuana. It would take people out of prison. We had an escapee in the upstate from a prison. He actually walked off from a work camp, but he was labeled an escapee. He was doing 4 years for distribution of marijuana. We've had people with violent crimes that weren't doing 4 years. At the cost of the taxpayer to put people in prison, we should be putting people in prison for violent crimes. And if we're going to be housing people in prison for drugs, it should be methamphetamine. We should raise the corner of the jail up and throw methamphetamine dealers and methamphetamine manufacturers underneath the jailhouse and let down on top of it, because it creates all the problems I just described that marijuana does not. It creates property crimes, it creates violent crimes.
It destroys lives.
Well, it's a poison that eventually kills people, and kids are being affected by methamphetamine to a great extent. I think at some point, Colorado, you mentioned, other states have followed suit, but I think Colorado is going to be a big experiment to see where it goes. What I told Chief Kill was this, in the conversation back and forth, and I highly respect him. He's one of my most respected individuals. My respect's not earned easily. He has it. I said, Mark, what's your biggest, what do you consider the biggest drug problem to the country? Well, the cartel, the Mexican cartel. They're creating havoc on our southern border. What's their number one source of revenue? Marijuana. How do they bring it in? If you take away the black market for marijuana,
You're destroying the cartel.
you're taking a huge portion of their revenue supply away. They grow marijuana. in their country and simply bring it across the border. If they're dealing in cocaine or heroin, they've got to get it into Mexico, then get it out of Mexico to bring into the United States. So you cut out an estimated 3/4 of their revenue stream. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, there you go. It's kind of like cutting off the head of the snake, isn't it?
Well, going back to this bill just simply, it does not make it legal. It simply takes that criminal charge off, leaves a fine in place, and is issued the same as a traffic ticket, the same as it would be for someone with an open container.
Okay. Well, we'll be interested to see how that one goes through the system. One thing we can always say about you, Mike Pitts, you always put out something interesting. Whether it's, our own gold standard for South Carolina, I remember that one. I mean, I think there's been some others too, but that's one that comes to mind right away. But
they kid me in Columbia, the attorneys, staff attorneys kid me and say about one bomb a year.
One bomb a year. Okay, so this is the bomb. He's already put it out. It'll be interesting to see if it gets through. Hey, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. When we come back, though, we are going to talk about an issue that is facing us right here in Greenwood. It has to do with the American Legion, and of course, it also has to do with the War Monument up there in Uptown Greenwood. I want to talk to Mike and see what his opinion is, having read the law and this type of thing. So we're going to discuss that, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time left to talk about civics, one of our favorite topics here on WCRS. So don't you go away. We'll be right back. Oh, that's right. We're right back here with Representative Mike Pitts, having a great conversation, talking about a lot of different issues. A lot of people probably are wanting to know what your opinion is, Mike. I know that you are a little bit up to speed on this. And there is a statute on the book. It's 10-1-165. And it says that all the monuments from the Revolutionary War through World War I, World War II, Korean, Vietnam, Persian, and goes on and on, about none of those, any of the state or any of its political set may be relocated, removed, disturbed, or altered. And this has kind of created what shall we say, a firestorm as far as the mayor is going ahead on Monday, Monday, January 19th, is going to have a ceremony and is going to take down the monuments, the plaques that say colored and white. And really, before 1948, we did have non-integrated military. After 1948, it was integrated. And of course, at that point, then it never said colored or white. And I know you gave me some information about this, and after you've looked at it a little bit, what are you thinking, Mike?
Well, it's pretty clear in the language of the statute in what it says. It doesn't say it may be altered. It says you can alter, move, change, etc. I understand the reasoning that you would want them all in alphabetical order, but there is a historical significance to the fact that, as you stated, prior to 48, the military was not integrated. It was a segregated military. Truman saw going into Korea a way to change, and that was to integrate the military. It is a complex issue for me. The issue being complex because I served with Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, Latino Americans, Black Americans, etc., etc., etc.
But that's the makeup of the military today.
Many of them were very good soldiers, and I would want them to be alphabetically listed. I wouldn't want them to be separated. If we were both killed at the same time, I would not want it to be separated. And as you just stated, it is the makeup of the military today, and plaques and monuments signify that from Korea on. But the law's very clear. The law says it can't be altered. The enforceability probably is a question. The enforceability falls on the hands of whoever actually owns the monument, or in this case, whoever actually owns the monument. I know in precedent, they were not allowed to alter, change, or move monuments. That's precedent notated in the Attorney General's opinions. But I think the American Legion owns this particular monument. So, in my opinion, it would be them to have the loudest voice, yes or no. But it still does not alter the fact that the law is very black and white and specific in what it says. It would not, in my position, if it were me taking a look at doing this, I probably would step back, since there is controversy, take a look at what we're trying to do, and make sure that it was not going to be something that could come back in a liability fashion on the city, the American Legion, whichever one it is. I believe, from what I've seen in writing, that it's probably the American Legion that would be the one that could fall back on, since they're the one that actually owns the money.
So it would be you're listening to WCRS right here in Greenwood. So I guess what you're saying is, since there doesn't seem to be from the American Legion, everything I can figure out from the American Legion is they're not in 100% agreement, that perhaps they should step back and make a firm decision before they proceed with this.
They should step back and make a firm decision before they proceed with it. But then again, it still does not change the fact that the law states you cannot move, alter, change, etc. A war memorial from the Revolutionary War to today. The proper course of action, if you wanted to change that, would be to change the law.
Okay.
And that would be for our legislators to change that particular code section.
Sure. And of course, then that would be a whole different ball of wax. But then it comes down to really from enforcement. What type of law enforcement would be willing to enforce that? Where would somebody go with that?
Well, I think the complaint could probably be filed by anyone, but the most obvious complaint would be to come from someone from the American Legion that was not in favor of the change. The other avenue, the other answer to the question, who would enforce, any certified law enforcement with jurisdiction over that particular area could enforce the law. Now, would they is a different question.
I think that's a big question, since Dale Kittles is actually with the Sheriff's Department, and he's working with the mayor on this. So that would be a question. Would anybody in this area?
Well, that would fall into the jurisdiction. That is in the city, so it would fall into the jurisdiction of the city police department. No, I don't have any idea whether they would enforce it or not. But I know at some point, if it were a complaint, someone would have to take a look at it, either enforce it or not enforce it, whether it was local law enforcement or state law enforcement.
Okay. So that's the question as far as where this is at. The mayor says that he is going to go forth with this on Monday, Martin Luther King's birthday date, next Monday at 2 p.m. And according to the poll that we've been doing on WCRS, we're now at 83.75% no and 16.25% yes. And also, I think I told you, the Index Journal even started a poll on their site, and it was running about 64 to 30 against changing it.
If you look back and or step back and take a look at what generated the original statute, which I have not done. I would guess that there are statues, there are memorials out there that some would like to absolutely abolish.
Sure.
That particular statute was put in place to protect. I don't think they had in mind this type
Sure.
of issue when that statute was put in place. I think it was something entirely different. But as I've stated more than once, the law is very clear in black and white in what it says.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, we wanted to make sure we got that in and just talked about it a little bit because a lot of people are very concerned. The other thing is we're coming up on the 100th anniversary of World War I. That's this year. So kind of interesting from that standpoint.
I remember my next door neighbor and my great uncle that fought in World War I. We talked a little bit about the education process of talking to old people that doesn't happen nowadays with kids because of the fast-paced lifestyle. But those two old guys told me a lot about World War I. They were telling me about mustard gas and the Germans using mustard gas and the sounds of machine guns and living in the trenches and all this kind of stuff when I was 8 years old. So
it doesn't take very far to get away from it, though, does it, Mike? I mean, like when you were 8 years old, and now it's, you know, here we are, and we're at a 100-year anniversary. They're actually going around, and they want people to turn in photographs of the monuments around the country. There's a big push to do that.
When I was 8 years old, Jeff Davis was president.
Jeff Davis was president?
Jefferson Davis.
Okay. You're looking awful good then, Mike. You're looking awful good. You know, one last topic. I'm not going to belabor this one, but it is a decision that the American Legion needs to make, but it also, as you said, it's very specific that says they're not to be changed. And personally, I kind of think if they were going to do something, there should be a monument or a placard, maybe that explains why this was done. Why it was done colored in white back in the day, and then after 1948 it changed. That would be an option to explain it.
So you want to educate people?
Education, what an idea.
On history and civics?
Yes. We've talked about this before, civics. What do you think about 3 weeks on the Second Amendment? That's a big discussion going on that's going to be going on down there at the State House.
That's Alan Clemens' bill you're talking about. I fully 100% support it for two reasons. I don't think just the Second Amendment needs to be taught. I think the entire Constitution, Bill of Rights, rule of law, and civics in general needs to be taught, and taught heavily. Our state constitution requires it in our universities, and that's not being done either.
Well, I'm sure it's not being done at the university level, right?
But it should be taught. I don't want this to be taken wrong, and I don't mean it derogatory, but quite often we run into an ignorant voting population. And ignorant meaning they are not educated in civics.
To the workings of government, per se, right?
That's correct.
Right.
And the different levels in the structure of government. So, yes, it should be taught. There's been a lot made of the NRA approved. The reason he put the NRA approved in there is because the NRA has a program that's already in a lot of our public schools called the Eddie Eagle program. It's for gun safety. Now, you may say, I don't have a gun, I don't want to expose my kid to a gun. That's fine, that's your choice. But do you know that everybody you let your child go visit or go home with does not have a gun in their home? I believe firmly in education and taking away the curiosity. And if you go back and read Jefferson's quotes, Washington's quotes early on, you know why the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. They believe firmly in the ability to defend yourself. They believe firmly in that gun ownership is a heavy responsibility.
Yes, it is.
And taking care of it, keeping it away from other people, and knowing how to use it. and when to use it is a heavy responsibility. So they believe that with that responsibility came a responsible citizen. So yes, the Second Amendment should be taught. I teach the Second Amendment at the beginning of every concealed weapons class that I teach. And I teach 2 a year for legislators. And I teach the Second Amendment so that they will be clearly aware that it is a constitutional right. It is not a privilege given by government. It is a constitutional right, just like the freedom of speech with this radio station.
Absolutely. Well, how do you think that one's going to fare down there?
I think it'll do well in the House. I don't know in the Senate. The Senate has a tendency to get bogged down. The closer you get to an election year, the more bogged down they become.
Well, so in closing here, you think education, are we going to get anywhere with education?
I think so. I just don't know where.
Okay. And the taxes on roads, fixing our roads and bridges, you know, what was it? I think it's going on 2 years ago now. They put, what, $500,000 or something aside to work on that. I think we're still waiting for a lot of this.
Well, the work was bid out last year, and some of the work is actually being done at this time. Like I said at one point in this interview,
Government moves very slow.
Government moves slower than I talk. And moss grows on my words.
Okay, I don't believe that. But Mike Pitts, I always appreciate you coming out and giving us the skinny on stuff. I know you've got a big year planned, and we'll be looking forward to having you back on again and having you sit down and talk to us.
Always enjoy coming in. As I've said before, you don't hedge from asking hard questions, and I admire that.
Thank you very much, Mike Pitts. Hey, this is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Bye-bye, everybody.